so I apologize for that. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was explaining how different Primerica businesses are run. And there's 3 circles that will determine your income here, right? There's one of the things that if I want to be known for things that, like, let's say someone's with us for a few years and then they leave the business, and then 5 years later, a small dough, they're like, oh, that guy Samir, with some of the things that he said. One of the things that I want to be known for saying is that it's not how much you make, right? But how you make it.
Yes.
That's what kind of changed my life in terms of not just focusing on the amount of money, but how I'm making the money. You know, when you get into your career, or when a career is recommended to you, like doctor, lawyer, that's the old school way of thinking. It probably still exists today. And that whole mindset of becoming a doctor or lawyer, yes, some people can say I had a dream to help people, that's why they want to be a doctor, sure, okay? But I think the majority of parents are proud or encourage, especially in certain cultures and communities, their kids to become doctors and lawyers is because of the money. So there's a perceived salary or income that's associated with certain positions, right? And so the how much is 90% of society, that's what they focus on, is how much. What's your name, bro?
Grant.
Grant. What was your major? What were you studying?
Finance.
And then what was the other thing?
Data science.
Right, data science. Okay, so data science, there's a perceived, that's like a hot thing right now in terms of the tech industry, if I understand if we're on the same page. Here, we do focus on how much, but it's how you're making the money, that's the real emphasis. I am not jealous of any doctor out there, even if they make more than me, right? I make doctor money, but I work a lot less. There's a huge difference. And if someone says, okay, I make $450 as a doctor, Samir makes $450 in Primerica, and as you guys know, my income is largely passive, right? When you look at the production sheets, I'm not saying this is good or bad, I'm just giving you the facts, okay? Every morning they post who are the top producers. I'm not on that list. Like sometimes I'm not even on it. I should be more, right? I make a lot on the months that I decide to produce, but $450 on a W-2, which is what a doctor is, right? And then $450 on passive income, it would be like, my mom talking about someone who lives in Pakistan, so like, oh no, they make $450 just like you make $450. No, they're in rupees, I'm in dollars. Yeah. It's a different currency. We're talking about 2 different things.
Exactly.
These are the things I want, in terms of things that I taught people, these are the things that I want people to understand, that we focus on the how you're making it. And, as inconceivable as it may be, would the 450 person drop down to 250? Would they trade that a 250 passive income? So you have the life of a doctor who's on call, who's dealing with patients. They like kind of helping people, but it's really stressful. Would they go to a situation where they sacrifice 200 grand of the W-2 income and have a almost completely passive 250 income? So passive income is that good. A lot of people will take definitely the same, that's common sense, but some people would take even less to have their time back. Remember, it doesn't matter who you are, how educated you are, how rich you are. The one thing that we all have the same is time, right? I'm 42 right now. There's other 42-year-olds out there, right? We have the exact same amount of time. 20 years is 20 years. The difference is how I'm experiencing those 20 years versus them. And how a billionaire is experiencing their 20 years versus me. Does that make sense? And how a healthy person is experiencing the 20 years versus a non-healthy person, which could change for me or anyone, only God knows, right? But that's what's really important. So back to this, what is going to determine how your business is going to pay you, how much you're going to make, and how you make? Well, there's 3 circles here. There's recruiting, there's securities, and then there's life insurance, which we call premium. So, now this is Samir talking. Many people, this is not Primerica talking. There's many people in Primerica that this is how they operate. They have a recruiting circle, right? And they have a premium circle, and it's more of like a 50-50. And the securities is nowhere there, right? Maybe it's like this. And so people blame it on, well, my community, right? That statistically, my community doesn't have investable assets. They're in like lower income markets, lower income communities, whatever the case may be. All of that's a choice. All of that's a choice. Just because you are in X community doesn't mean you have to work in X community. You are choosing to work in that market. Okay? Now, does that mean that my business doesn't have exposure to those communities? Of course they do. I recruit people that are in those communities. They choose to work in those communities. I'm not saying no one can't work in those communities. We're here to help people. But you have to be asking yourself, based on what you think about what you're doing, what are you really building? And then there's the other side of this too, right? There's people who this is recruiting, this is premium. So what this is supposed to represent is that there's a lot more recruiting than premium. And then there is the recruiting, but this is the premium. So what does this say? There's people who recruit very little, and then they do a lot of premium. Then you have people in the business who are, and this is securities. So then you have people that they do a little bit of premium, they do a lot of securities, and they don't recruit anybody. High recruiting, low premium, that's an inefficient business. High securities, low premium, you're not building really a business, you're just building your book of business and you're a personal producer. Recruiting and premium, 50 and 50, you're always going to have a team, they're going to produce, their incomes just won't really be that high in my opinion. The other problem is that when you're in a one product business, it's sometimes difficult, there are exceptions, it's sometimes difficult to have high retention with one product. Because Primerica tells us that statistically clients that only have one of our products, that around 60% actually keep it. When you attach a second, now you get into mid-70s. When you attach a third product, you're into mid-80s in terms of retention. Retention is very, very important in our business. That's why you see people, they're able to get people to apply for insurance, they get premium, but on the back end, their cash isn't that high because their retention is down. So the business that I want to build, and I encourage my people to build, and no matter how young you are, right, is we want basically balance of everything. Right? So you have recruiting, you have life insurance, you have securities. Now, does it happen like that from day one? No, but it's what you want to strive to have. A very balanced business. So if someone is doing all securities, why aren't you recruiting? If someone's doing all life insurance, why aren't you doing securities? Why aren't you recruiting, right? You want to have these things all moving forward. There's a couple times I've been on a securities trip. They are difficult to win. It's mostly for the people who are not to make excuses, but the biggest circle is securities for them, right? But I've been taken on them, because Shaq has won them, he's had people get really big trades, and then he always takes me. And one of the things that I heard at that securities trip, like, there's an award for doing 30 by 30 by 30. Right? And I always thought to myself, now that would be one to win. What this means is that someone is averaging over that period of time 30 recruits, 30,000 in life insurance premium, and they have 30 million under management. And I think I've even at one of the trips heard 50 by 50 by 50, which I would have all allowed. Now, I didn't at the time. You know? So remember that these different business models exist. You have to be very intentional with the one that you want to build for yourself, the example you want to set for your team. Now, here's the thing about recruiting a lot of people. You can have your example of what type of infrastructure you want to create, but when you have a lot of people, there's going to be people who gravitate towards what they want to do. So we can't force people who don't want to recruit, and we can't force people to do securities if they only want to do life, and vice versa. So you're going to have people, no matter, if you're the biggest recruiter in the world, doesn't mean everyone that you recruit is going to be a recruiter. The point is, you're recruiting that many people. Well, you will have someone, or a lot of people, who just want to be producers in any one category. But you just want to make sure that you're balancing that out by focusing on a lot of different things. And I will say this about securities. People who focus solely on securities is that, and a big time builder told me this, I never forgot this, he said, you can't build on securities. So it's really difficult to just do securities and then create district leaders and division leaders who also want to get district leaders and go RVP and then become an SVP and an NSD. If you have a sole focus on securities, for the most part, you are going to be by yourself. I had this attorney one time, and he told me that, he told me this joke I didn't really understand at the time. He was like, yeah, it's like movie theaters during the day. The only two people that are there are homemakers and commercial realtors, right? And I didn't understand the joke. But now I kind of understand it, right? Because why are commercial realtors bored and at the movies during the day?
Work nights and weekends. They work nights and weekends.
What's another reason why? I guess you have to actually understand commercial real estate. So the way that they get paid is they get paid a percentage of the full lease.
Sure.
So if you have a business like in this building and someone signs a 10-year lease and they're paying $10,000 a month, like a real businesses pay real big rent, right? So $10,000 a month is $120 a year. Gets a 10-year lease. And so that's 1.2 million. That's the total lease amount, and there's no way out of it for the business owner. So they'll give the commercial realtor some percentage of that. Let's say I don't know if it's 10%, but let's say it's 10%. That's $120,000 commission. Now here's the thing: the client is already committed to you that they're going to do it, but their lease doesn't end on their current lease from where they are right now for 4 months. So what are you doing? You're sitting on your ass waiting, and that's what securities is too. Life insurance, like, I have an appointment every night. I'm meeting with people. I'm training people. I'm getting a transaction. I'm losing a transaction. I'm getting another transaction. I got a referral. Securities is not like that. Securities, the sales cycle, yeah, it's not as long as commercial real estate, but it can drag out, and then you find yourself waiting around, and we're all human beings, and you're thinking and talking about really stupid stuff. I was at a securities meeting the other day where one of the wholesalers basically begged me to go. And I walked in the room and everyone looked at me, they're like, you're here? I was the only recruiter that was there. They'd only seen my numbers. And some of the people I knew from way back in the day, but they know who I was, right? And the lady at the front of the room, she was doing her presentation, which is, I already know this stuff, but I was just there out of respect for her. And she said, she called out someone, she's like, you had a question about this brochure. Remember you called and you said that there's a mistake in the brochure? Well, here's what we mean by, and I'm like, There's RVPs that are sitting around looking at brochures and calling you and saying, hey, we have a question about, we did our own calculation and we think that this 10-year projection, this is what people do when they focus just on products. You have nothing else to do but think about minutia, right? Like the dumbest, minuscule, stupidest things because you have nothing to do. That's what happens, okay? And that being said, that's coming from someone, maybe I'm just cocky, I think I'm better than all of them at securities. That's the funny thing. I could build my own wealth management firm if I wanted to, with my network, with managed accounts, with the type of people I know, with how I know how to communicate. You don't think that I could do that? I don't want to do that. Right? These are all my opinions. Everyone can do whatever they want.